In the last video, we exposed why so many new tools feel cheap the second real work starts. It was not just bad luck or a few weak brands. The whole system shifted toward lower cost and higher margins. Then, the comments backed it up. One viewer said, "The difference shows up the minute you compare homeowner tools with commercial tools, and that you get what you pay for." Another said, "Tools these days are not made for people anymore. They are made for profit." But the scam goes further than bad factories. Some of these tools are being shuffled into different badges, boxes, and price brackets. So buyers think they are stepping up when they are really buying the same thing all over again. Today, we are exposing Home Depot's private label lie. And once you see how the shelf is set up, you will never walk through that aisle the same way again. The price trap. A lot of buyers still walk in thinking the shelf is honest. They assume the lower price means stripped down, the middle price means smart value, and the top price means a meaningful jump in quality. Sometimes that is true. A lot of the time, it is just retail staging doing what it is supposed to do. You are not only being shown products, you are being walked toward a feeling: safe, heavy-duty, professional, reliable. That is why people end up paying 2 or 3 times more for a tool that is not 2 or 3 times more useful for the work they actually do. That is the first mistake. People shop the badge before they shop the job. They stand there thinking they are comparing motors and durability, but a lot of them are really comparing fear. Fear of buying cheap junk, fear of regretting the middle option, fear of looking back later and feeling like they cut corners. Stores understand that emotional math better than most shoppers do. That is why the aisle feels so smooth. It is not random. It is built to make one decision feel responsible, another feel risky, and another feel like the serious upgrade. And once you notice that, the next question gets a lot more uncomfortable, because the shelf is often less independent than it looks. Shelf control. A lot of buyers think they are looking at clean competition between fully separate brands with fully separate incentives. But Home Depot has told investors that it sells proprietary products comparable to national brands, and that those proprietary products generally carry higher margins. It also lists proprietary brands, such as Husky and HDX. On top of that, HDX is marketed on Home Depot's own site as exclusive to Home Depot. And Ryobi's own site says only at the Home Depot. That already tells you the shelf is not just a neutral showroom. It is a controlled retail environment with brands and relationships that are helping shape the comparison before you ever touch the box. Then it gets even tighter. Tektronic Industries Company Limited lists both Milwaukee and Ryobi in its brand portfolio. Rigid's handheld power tool warranty pages say those products are manufactured by One World Technologies, Inc., under license, and the current Rigid Power Tools site also says only at the Home Depot. That does not prove every tool on the shelf is literally the same inside with a different sticker slapped on it. That would be sloppy, but it absolutely does prove something most buyers never stop to consider. The tool wall can look like independent competition, while actually being built from exclusive access, licensing arrangements, retailer-controlled brands, and overlapping manufacturing ecosystems. The difference on the shelf can be real, but the separation is often nowhere near as clean as the buyer imagines. And once the shelf has convinced you those worlds are neatly separated, the next trap becomes much easier to sell: the real commitment. This is the part that quietly turns a simple purchase into a long chain of future purchases. A person thinks he is choosing a drill. He is not. He is choosing a battery family, charger speed, replacement battery cost, future bare tool pricing, and how expensive it will feel to switch later. That is why one cheap kit can become an expensive mistake. And one expensive kit can feel justified long after the buyer stopped asking what he actually got for the extra money. That is also why stores love platform language so much. Compatibility sounds like freedom. Sometimes it is, sometimes it is a fence with a nicer paint job. Ryobi's own platform history leans hard into long-running battery compatibility. And that is exactly the kind of promise that keeps people in the system once they get started. A buyer tells himself he is saving money by entering the affordable line. But 6 months later, he is buying more tools because switching feels wasteful. Another buyer jumps into a more premium platform and starts defending every purchase because admitting he overspent would sting more than the receipt. Either way, the battery does not just power the tool, It locks in the future. That is why the aisle can make weak value look generous without working very hard. Because now it has another way to hide the real math, bad bundle math. A bloated combo kit is one of the easiest ways to make people stop comparing clearly. 2 batteries, charger, bag, extra light, maybe another accessory, maybe a special buy tag, and suddenly the whole thing feels too generous to question. But the question does not go away just because the box got louder. It gets more important. What size are the batteries, really? How fast is the charger? Are these extra tools things you would ever buy on purpose? Are you paying for useful capacity or for cardboard bulk? This is where a lot of buyers get played without feeling tricked. One kit looks cheap because the starting price is low. Another looks premium because the pile in the box is bigger. Another looks smart because the promotion makes it feel temporary. But when you separate the numbers, the difference often shrinks fast. A tool-only price tells one story. A bundled kit tells another. Replacement batteries tell a third. If the platform already owns you, the future tools start looking cheaper than they really are, because the most expensive part of the decision happened earlier. And the store knows exactly how that fog works. Home Depot routinely mixes single products, bundles, special values, and daily deals across the same brand families. Even on Ryobi listings, the pricing can swing hard, depending on whether you are looking at tool only, kit, a temporary daily deal, or a credit card linked promotion. That is not proof that every deal is fake. It is proof that the shelf is not asking to be judged cleanly. It is asking to be felt emotionally right now, before you slow the math down. And once the kit stops the buyer from comparing clearly, the badge takes over and finishes the job. Pride over proof. This is where the whole aisle becomes easier to understand. One colorway is talking to the homeowner who wants reachable value. Another is talking to the buyer who wants to feel serious. Another is talking to the person who never wants to hear himself say, I should have just spent a little more. That is why a lot of tool shopping is really identity shopping wearing a hardware costume. There is nothing wrong with wanting quality. There is something wrong with treating every purchase like a referendum on your standards. A weekend user starts talking himself into daily use logic. A guy hanging shelves starts shopping like he is outfitting a commercial crew. A homeowner who needs one solid saw for a few seasonal projects gets talked into platform pride. That is where the extra money starts becoming vague. It is no longer buying a clearly better outcome. It is buying insulation from self-doubt. And this is exactly why the private label setup works so well. It does not need every product to be fake or every premium brand to be a ripoff. It just needs the difference to feel bigger than the average buyer is equipped to verify. Once that happens, the badge can do what the specs no longer need to do. It can carry the whole purchase emotionally. That would be easier to ignore if the price stayed put. But another piece of the puzzle gives the whole game away, the pricing game. One of the clearest tells in this whole ecosystem is what happens outside the polished shelf. Direct Tools Factory Outlet sells Ryobi and Rigid products, including factory blemished and factory reconditioned tools, and says factory blemished products include the manufacturer's warranty. That matters because it shows something most retail shelves work very hard to hide. Price is often much softer than presentation. A tool that looked carefully positioned at one level of the aisle can show up in another channel at a dramatically different number, without suddenly becoming useless junk overnight. That does not mean every Home Depot price is wrong or every outlet deal is smarter. It means the price ladder you see in the store is not the pure truth of value. It is retail strategy. It is channel strategy. It is margin strategy. It is a way of teaching the buyer what each level is supposed to mean. Once you see the same ecosystem produce very different price impressions depending on where and how it is sold, the shelf stops looking like a neutral ranking of worth. That is the part experienced buyers understand. They stop asking which badge feels right, and start asking which cost is actually carrying the decision. Is it the tool, the batteries, the charger, the convenience, the exclusivity, the retailer story? The answer is usually a mix of all of them. And that is exactly why the wrong purchase feels reasonable at the time. Once you know that, buying smarter stops being complicated. Buy smarter, start with the job, not the color. Not the badge, not the shelf position. Ask how often you will use it, how hard you will push it, and what failure would actually cost you. That one move clears out a huge amount of nonsense immediately. A tool that earns money can justify spending up. A tool that comes out a few weekends a year needs to defend its price much harder. Most people know this in theory. They forget it the second the aisle starts talking to their pride. Then separate the numbers. Tool only, full kit, battery size, replacement battery cost, charger quality, future tools in the platform. That is the part stores hope you never slow down enough to do. They want the bundle to feel complete, the premium line to feel serious, and the exclusive line to feel special. But once you split the costs apart, a lot of fake distance disappears. After that, be honest about your habits. Many buyers do not need the cheapest thing. They also do not need the most flattering version of themselves hanging on a peg in a brighter box. They need a tool that suits the workload, stays out of the way, and does not turn into a long, expensive loyalty plan by accident. That is not glamorous. It is just how practical people stop overpaying. If you have ever stood in that aisle and wondered whether you were paying for a better tool or just a better story, you are not alone. That is exactly why this matters. So now I want to hear from you. Have you ever bought a tool that looked like a smart deal and turned out to be a mistake? Let us know in the comments. And if you want more honest breakdowns like this, like the video, subscribe and stick with us.